Welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast with Noelle Custis, where we ignite the spark to discover your favorite self. It is time to get real, ladies. Hello, and welcome back to the Rise to Shine podcast. I'm your host, Noelle Custis, and today we're going to be diving into a topic that I feel like every woman will face at some point in her life, and that is aging. But what if we could shift our mindset and embrace it as a process filled with wisdom and grace and self acceptance? So, joining us is Alina Wilson, and she is a 17 plus year medical aesthetics expert. And she is also the author of the transformative new book, Thoughtful Aging and Restoring Honor to the Aging Process. Alina's mission is to help women love who they see in the mirror just as they are, while breaking down the myths of the anti-aging industry. So we're going to explore how to navigate a superficial world, reclaim the narrative around beauty, and live a judgment-free life. So this conversation promises to inspire and empower you to see aging in a whole new light. And I am so excited to introduce you to Alina. Hello, Alina.
Hi, Noelle. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to have you on here. Even just in sharing that introduction, that came from what I learned about you. And I just feel like this is going to be such a beautiful episode that so many women really just need to hear. As a matter of fact, it prompts me to think about, I was just at a retreat this past weekend, and we were really working on overcoming limiting beliefs. And I was fascinated as I was even kind of looking over some of the questions that I wanted to ask you today, in knowing that so many limiting beliefs for women, especially as we start to age, become centered around how we look and how we define beauty. And so I am even more excited, since coming off of that weekend, to be able to really have this conversation with you. So I'd love to really start out by just having you share your story. So first of all, what inspired you to start your journey in medical aesthetics? And how has your perspective on beauty evolved throughout the 17 years?
So I'm in my 18th year now. So back in 2006, 2007, I was married to a physician, and he was working in the medical system, but frustrated with being limited in how he could care for patients based on clinic guidelines, insurance reimbursement guidelines, things like that. And so he came home one day and he said, I want to open a clinic and I want to do aesthetics. I want to get out of conventional medicine and do something where people are coming in because they want to be there, not because they have to be there. And so we talked about it, and I said, okay, well, I can make that happen. Being the high achieving, probably very naive person that I tend to be as I walk through life. So we opened that clinic together in 2007. And at the time, it was just him as a provider. I had hired one esthetician and myself, kind of running the front desk and doing all the business things. And I quickly realized that, first of all, I loved it. I loved having these deep conversations with women every single day. And it just, and still is to this day, such a privilege to hold their stories, And in that, I realized anti-aging as an industry is so backwards. I mean, why are we chasing the unattainable? There's got to be more to it than this. And as the years went on, and I continued to have these beautiful conversations with these women who could see my beauty, but not their own, and realizing I'm in that same space. I'm looking at them and seeing, they're obviously here for cosmetic, wanting to enhance or improve something. I'm seeing their beauty, but I wasn't seeing my own. And so that got me thinking, okay, where is this disconnect coming from? And why are we all living this same narrative that
Right.
tells us that we're not enough, or that youthfulness equates to beauty, when it's so much deeper than that. And that really is what started my path toward exploring where are we and how did we get here and where do we want to go from this point on.
Ah, gosh, that is so beautifully said. I love that. I keep reflecting going, "Oh my gosh, all the women that were at this retreat need to hear this just based on what." Because I can't even tell you all of the conversations around this and how you
Mhm.
are so right that it is so much deeper and it's so easy for us to see the beauty in others, but so much more complicated. And there are so many things going on that we struggle with seeing our own. So I'm curious, how did the idea, I think I know a little bit of this answer, but I'd love for you to share, how did the idea for thoughtful aging come about for you?
It was a few years ago, actually, and I was actually interviewing a potential employee, and she asked me, "What do you do here? You know, what
Mm,
kind of anti aging treatments do you do here?"
mhm,
And I immediately replied with, "Well, you know what? We don't really do anti aging, it's more like thoughtful aging." And
mm,
that really stuck with me. That came just straight from my heart. Like, no, finally I got to the point in my own thoughts where I was able to verbalize and formulate what it was that I didn't like about that term. And it
yeah,
just came out of me. And then as soon as I said it, I was like, yeah, that's it.
mm,
That's what we do. Now, what is that? And
right.
so then, my thoughts for the years following were, okay, well, what is thoughtful aging and what does that really mean? And how do we create real life application and shift this paradigm from something unattainable to something much more deep and healthy for us as women? To
Mm,
reframe. I mean, we've got to reframe, right? We
right,
can't just keep chasing youth and thinking that that's it. We can't keep coming into places like mine and thinking that we're here to fix a problem. There are no problems to fix.
right, right. Well, and I feel like, you had talked about it. I was, doing all my research and you were talking about restoring honor to the aging process. And I loved that because, like you said, it's shifting that perspective. It's shifting it to know that we don't have to be so youth obsessed. I feel like our world has become so youth obsessed. And so I would love to just hear, how do you encourage women to love who they see in the mirror with the flaws, all of it, but also recognizing that there's this honor to our aging process.
So I hear what you're asking. And I would just say right off the bat, it is possible to see your reflection and love who you see in the mirror.
Yeah.
It's about shifting your mindset
Mhm.
to what you see. And you use the word flaws.
Mm,
We are wired to look in the mirror and find things that we don't like.
mhm.
My personal opinion is we don't have flaws.
I
There
love
are
that.
things about our reflection that we like and things that we don't like.
Yeah.
And the key is really in being able to shift your automatic negative thoughts so that when you approach the mirror and you just naturally want to find, oh, there's another wrinkle, or there's this, or I don't like
Mm,
that, or my neck is sagging. I don't know a single woman who doesn't have those thoughts, but there's nothing wrong with having those thoughts. It's about what you do with it afterwards. So are
mhm,
you going to sit in that space, or are you going to try something different? And maybe what I did in my own personal life is I decided to combat every negative thought with two positive thoughts,
mm. I love
whether
that.
it was about my body, about how I was feeling. The honor in aging comes from valuing wisdom over superficiality. The problem is that we, as a society in general, and especially these younger generations that I see coming up, um, we've lost touch with what values are.
Mhm,
So I'm literally afraid that there's this whole generation coming up behind us, my granddaughter's generation, who don't understand what values are.
mm,
Not just honor, but the wisdom, the integrity, the character that comes from not focusing on superficiality.
Yeah.
Now, there's nothing wrong with coming in and having a procedure done. I want to be very clear about that. And
Mhm.
I love that I have the ability to help women return to the version of themselves that they feel like they are on the inside, but we do it from a place of want versus a place of need.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's so interesting when you had said that, I immediately thought of I know that we talked, before recording that, part of what I do is, uh, I have a virtual school called the Glow Up School, and I work with midlife women. And one of the things that I really pivoted with saying, because I recognize that so much, just like saying flaws, you're right.
Mm,
It's so true that it's a mindset shift to shift the thoughts of not even having that word in our vocabulary and looking at it from a different lens. And one of the things I remember I always used to say is I always used to say, I want to help people become the best versions of themselves. And through a lot of conversation, I realized that for women, again, it puts that pressure to feel like it's
mm,
so hard to attain. And so now I say, I want to help you become the favorite version of yourself. And I love that even with what you're saying about coming in and having a procedure, it's not that that is a bad thing or the wrong thing to do, or, no judgment, because it really is about becoming that favorite version of yourself. And I love that there's a place for both, that
mhm,
we can work on that, and seeing ourselves in a place of being beautiful. And I loved also that you said, for every negative, I believe you said, for every negative
mhm.
thought, you have two positive thoughts. And I just think those pieces of helping women have tools and strategies to understand how we can, because we talk about mindset a lot, but then women go, okay, but what does that mean? What do I need to actually do to start shifting that mindset? So I love that you shared that, because I know that, in your book, you talk about letting go of these impossible standards. So how do you think women can begin to really unlearn these standards and reclaim their narratives, their own narratives?
There is a way to do it that actually is not that complicated.
Mm,
It starts with really being able to see yourself. And again, going back to your reflection,
mhm,
deciding, are you looking at yourself or are you seeing yourself? Because there's a big difference. When you look in the mirror, if you're looking at yourself, you're standing in a place of judgment. When you're seeing yourself, you're standing in a place of acceptance. And sometimes that's a really difficult bridge to gap
mm,
because we're so wired to believe that number one, we have to stay young to stay relevant.
mhm.
We reach a certain age, midlife, as you know, where it gets a little bit confusing. You know,
Right.
suddenly we're out and about, and the maitre d isn't trying to take our coat. We have to hang up our own coat, or
Right.
the clerk at the grocery store doesn't ask us how our day is and smile at us. They just bag our groceries and say goodbye. I mean, there's a sense
Uh-huh.
of relevance that we lose, and you kind of go, well, I know I'm getting older. I'm feeling older. It must be because I must no longer be relevant.
Mm,
It must be these wrinkles. I've got to go get them fixed,
mhm,
right? But when we have those experiences, if we can stop for a moment, and this is just across the board in life in general, get curious. Why is this happening?
mhm,
And that's the first, well, I'm sorry, that's actually the second step. The first step is cultivating a growth mindset,
mhm.
deciding that you want to grow. If you don't want to change, don't change, and there's no harm in that.
Mhm.
Absolutely not. But let's remove right and wrong from the conversation of beauty. Don't judge someone else because of their choices. Just
Right.
take responsibility for yourself. Right and wrong has no place in the conversation of beauty. So, cultivating a growth mindset allows you to get curious. When those things happen in life, or when you wake up and you see another wrinkle, do you automatically think, I need to fix that, which most of us do? Or can you take a step back and say, wait a minute, how'd that get there? Was it from smiling too much? That's not a bad thing. Do I want to fix it or do I need to fix it?
Mm.
Here's the challenge though. And I'm sure that you face this with women who come to you. When they come to you, do they feel like they're coming from a place of deficit? That's actually a question I wanted to ask you when they come to
Yeah,
you.
oftentimes, yes. Oftentimes,
Mhm.
yes. And that's part of, what we are working on as well is shifting that mindset that it is not coming from a place of deficit, but it is very, I feel like it's very common with especially women in midlife for sure.
So, yeah, I'm glad to hear that because that actually mirrors what I experience here in the clinic where they come in. And a lot of times when we change, whether it's coloring our hair or getting our nails done, when we change our physical appearance, it's an immediate way that we can feel better.
Mhm.
And it works. And that's great. And that's what we do here. When you start getting curious about what you're doing and why you're doing it, whether it's changing your appearance, the way you speak to someone at the grocery store, or the way they speak to you, then it can uncover this whole area within us that just has been undiscovered. So there's a lot to uncover internally, and that can be scary sometimes. So practicing self acceptance and compassion is
Mhm.
really key to shifting your mindset because you'll discover that you think things or say things or do things that are just automatically programmed that you weren't aware of,
Right.
and you wonder why was I living that way for so long, why did
Yeah.
I believe that for so long? It's okay. Just decide whether you want to continue to believe that, and that's really
Mhm.
the challenge in all of this is not just how you've gotten to who where you are, but who do you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years? Where do you want to be?
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's funny because one of the things that we talk about in my world is just how I love, gosh, I just am so fascinated because this is something I had never really thought about is what you said about seeing yourself is different than what was the exact.
Looking at yourself is
Yes,
different than
looking at
seeing
yourself.
yourself.
Yes,
Mhm.
wow, that was just so profound for me because, I had never thought about it that way,
Mm.
and it reminds me of in my world, so tying back to what I was starting with, in my world, we talk a lot about just how we talk to ourselves and the
Mhm.
things that we say to ourselves when we look in the mirror, and how we literally, when we really think about it, we are beating ourselves up and just so
Mhm.
brutal to ourselves when we look in the mirror oftentimes. And one of the things that I had started doing and started working with clients on is to find a picture of yourself when you were a little girl, and maybe one of your favorite pictures, and have that up, whether it be on your computer. For me, it's on my bathroom mirror,
Mm.
and to really remember and embody that she is still a part of us. That is, we are each other, we are of one. And I would never talk to that little girl the way that I talk to myself as I'm aging and the way I look. All I find is this, cute, adorable. I find all the sweet features, even some of the features that I may not necessarily, when I am looking in the mirror going, oh, how did I get to this point? And this is the curiosity part that I love that you said, because
Mm.
it's like, how did I get to the point that I can look at this picture of me when I was little and I can go, "Oh my goodness, her nose is so cute," but then as an adult, I'm panicking about my nose, going, "Oh my gosh, it sticks up a little too much," or, whatever. But then once I get curious about that, I start to recognize that comes from things such as what people have said about you, what,
Mhm.
maybe it's just been a change and maybe you have, something that looks different. Maybe it's a sunspot on your face because you've been out in the sun so much. I mean, there's just so many things. And I just find that those types of practices and really getting curious is so helpful. We don't even, I mean, we don't realize it until we start to learn about these things. And that's why I love bringing guests like you on the podcast, is that, we hear things and we get to learn and just really start to apply some of this and be able to say, wow, I never thought to get curious about that. Why is it that
Mhm.
I was okay with it as a little girl, or looking at it as a little girl, and now as I'm aging, I'm struggling with this. um yeah,
So
I just
your life experiences have informed your belief about yourself. And
yeah.
that's a brilliant idea, by the way. When you are looking at a picture of yourself as a younger girl, she only knew what she knew. And all she knew was what had been taught to her by others who maybe didn't understand her in the way that she needed to be understood, or love her in the way that she needed to be loved.
Mhm.
When we are able to stand in that place of self acceptance and compassion for that little girl, then we have the opportunity to reparent her, to fill the gaps and
Yeah.
give her the things that she needed that she wasn't able to get from others. And it wasn't, in many cases, not that others didn't want to give those things to her. They just were operating at their own capacity. They only knew what they knew. And what we're talking about is generational, I'm going to say trauma, but I use that very loosely.
Right.
But habits, patterns. Back when my father was growing up, it was all about survival. They didn't have the luxury of sitting back and contemplating philosophy, or
Right.
how they felt about anything. If the cows didn't get fed, then there was hell to pay when their dad got home. So
Exactly.
so that's, and then I was raised with that same intensity.
Yeah.
Then he went off to Vietnam War and came back. All of that to say, his life experience greatly, and my mother's greatly influenced my life experience. So I learned some very beautiful lessons from them, but there were many, many pieces of the things that they taught me that just did not fit for me.
Mhm.
However, I had to play to belong. I knew what I needed to do to get my mom's attention or my dad's attention in a positive way.
Right.
And I learned to do all those things because it was a matter of survival.
Right.
Dr. Kurt Thompson has said, and this is one of the quotes in my book, we're all born into this world looking for someone, looking for us. And we remain in that mode of searching for the rest of our lives. When we approach life in a way that makes us think we need to outsource that validation in order to belong, then we give away our autonomy and we're no longer standing in a place of choice. When you're not standing in a place of choice, then you're making decisions for others, not for yourself. When you deny yourself truth, every time you privilege another person's emotions over truth, you give just a little bit of yourself away, and you end up in your 30s, 40s, 50s, just standing there feeling kind of lost, like, how did I get here? But you're
Yeah.
not lost. You're truly not lost. You're just undiscovered.
Mm. I love that. Oh my gosh. So, such goodness here. I'm curious for you personally in your own journey, what has been the most surprising or rewarding aspect of aging in your life?
I love aging. I always have. I can't wait to get older. I just turned 53, and was laying in bed yesterday thinking, oh, 60 is going to be great. What's it going to be like? But that's partly because of my life choices. I had children at a very young age. So I was 18 when I had my first child.
Okay.
22, by age 22, I had three children. And so I was one of those people who I would be walking through the grocery store, with three children under the age of 5, and someone would ask me how long I was babysitting.
Oh,
Like, oh
wow.
no, these are mine. And I just, for me, it was almost reverse discrimination. And for some reason, when I turned 30, all of that magically stopped. I was suddenly somehow old enough and capable enough to raise three human beings on my own. I was a single mother by that point.
Okay.
Um, And so I loved 40, I loved 50. I just, there's so much beauty that comes with aging because
Yeah.
I think it's the challenge inherent in aging. We wake up every day with a choice. Are you going to embrace it or are you going to deny it? Because it's going to happen whether you want it to or not.
Right.
And one
Right.
of the questions that I ask readers in the book is if I asked you to name all of the things that you loved, how long would it take you to name yourself?
Mm, really
Right?
good. I would
Yeah.
love for our listeners to really, can you repeat that? I'd love for them to just really hear that.
If I ask you to name all of the things that you love, how long would it take you to name yourself?
Mm, that literally gives me chills.
Mm,
Such a such a great question. It's just so much deeper than what we even realize, it's so
hmm
easy. Again, it's so I think it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, that it's so easy to look at other women and think how beautiful they are. Here's a perfect example. There is no accident that we are having this conversation after this retreat because my mind is just blown right
Mm,
now with the
I love that.
connections I'm able to make with this. And we had a beautiful woman that was at our retreat. She's 56 years old. Everyone from the beginning, from the moment she walked into the door, everyone was commenting on just how beautiful this woman was. And um, very, and just, just such a beautiful human inside and out, really. And
Was
it
it
was
the way that she looked, or was it how she carried herself, or
I
her
think it was,
presence?
to be honest with you, it was both. I feel like
Okay.
she walked through that door and she did definitely have the beauty, she was just a beautiful woman, but it was also the way she carried herself. It was the way she was dressed. It was her hair. I mean, it was like this whole package. And then
Mm.
as we got to know her even more, she became even more stunning. And, here's what was so fascinating. We at the end of the retreat, and I will tell you, it wasn't about us. This was actually a retreat for we are in a program that we are in the process of writing a book, and so we had photo shoots, and it was really about holding space for starting, kind of this new chapter, quote unquote, of launching a book and kind of evolving in that space and being able to hold our own space for all of that and kind leveling up and being there in our life. And it was so interesting because we had this photo shoot, and after, at the end of the retreat, we she was going through some of the slides showing us some of the photos that were going to be published, and
Mm.
hers came up, and literally we all were like, I know now because afterwards when we were reflecting about this, we were all like, wow, she reminded me of back in the day, and I'm totally aging myself here, but I remember, the shows like Dynasty and all
Yeah.
of these shows where these women were just like so bold and beautiful. And here she is sitting and she's, signing books, and we were all smiling, and I look over at her and I could just see like tears welling up in her eyes.
Why?
And I the gal that was heading this training in the retreat looked at her and said, what something to the effect of like, what is touching you right now? And it wasn't that she saw herself as like, "Oh my gosh, I'm just overwhelmed with like joy and is seeing myself on this screen in this picture." She immediately went, "I hate the way I look. I hate this picture. I am like devastated that it looks like this."
Oh.
And we were all in shock. I mean, honestly, I think our mouths all dropped, and we had to, kind of pause and work through this whole identity. And it was, her looking at herself and not seeing herself as who she was, but like looking at herself in a way that was very critical. I mean, it was, my hair is too blonde. It makes me look older. My face looks red. It just, it broke my heart initially. But what ultimately ended up coming out of it was this beautiful work of her being able to change that through perspective and through a mindset shift of something different. And it was like a good hour of really digging in. Um,
Really?
but it was fascinating because again, it's so easy for us to look at others and think everybody else is so beautiful, and then we struggle with um our own identity sometime in the and our aging. It was the aging process. It was all about the aging process.
Mm.
I look too old. I don't feel old. And that's what she kept saying. I don't feel like, my brain feels young. I feel youthful. I'm in shape. My body feels good. But when I see pictures, there's this face that is aging, and I don't know how to handle that. Which I thought, wow, it was just fascinating to go through because it wasn't at all what I was expecting. So it was interesting to go through that process and then hearing what you're sharing with us as well, that you love the aging process. And that's my hope for women, is that we would love it, because I've learned to love it too. I've learned to embrace it in such a different way, because I'm not um, just looking at what's on the surface. It's so much deeper than that.
You know
But
what
even
I love most
on the
about that?
surface.
What I love most about that story, I just have to say, is the courage that she had to really unpack that thought process and to
Yeah,
face that, and not just alone, but
right.
in the presence of people she didn't know.
Yeah,
That takes a lot of courage.
yeah,
That's some really strong character. But one of the
absolutely.
chapters in my book, I did a survey of 1,200 women, and I asked them, what has the aging process been like for you? And it broke my heart because I
Mm,
heard story after story, comment after comment of women in that situation who couldn't see their own beauty,
yeah,
who were the negative self-talk was again just heartbreaking.
mhm,
I'm ugly. A lot, I heard a lot of like, I'm ugly, I'll
yeah,
never be good enough, and comments that, to me, nobody would choose to think that about themselves.
mm,
So why do we?
right.
How do
Yeah.
we create a culture that allows us to practice self-acceptance and compassion, stay mindful and grounded,
Mhm,
while we work our way through these automatic negative thoughts that are actually suppressing and holding us down, keeping us from being the women that we were designed to be, that we can be, to fully express ourselves? I know so many women who feel like they're too much, or the equal
mm,
number of women who feel like they're not enough.
right.
And that's messaging that we no longer need to live by.
Yeah.
It's served its purpose. It played a role in allowing us to feel safe at some point in our lives. But anymore, is it what you really believe? Or is it just an excuse to not fully self express because you're
Mm,
afraid? And if you are afraid, that's completely understandable. I totally get it.
yeah.
Start small. Start
Yeah.
small. Start by looking at your reflection and choosing to see beyond your reflection, to see who you really are. And if you don't like who you are, then change it.
Yeah. Yeah. So another question that I'm just curious about, because we are talking about, this next generation that's coming up, and how can we change this? I would be so curious to hear, what would you say to a younger version of yourself about aging and beauty?
Well, I think about my granddaughter sometimes and I watch her. She's in junior high, and I have a younger one, and I have a daughter who's in her 30s, and I have a boys, and we are all affected by aging. We are all affected by change. And
Mhm.
aging inherently is change.
Yeah.
So if you can understand, remove the stigma from aging and just embrace it as change, then you can decide whether you want to fight it or flow with it. And
Mhm.
so, what I tell my granddaughter, my daughter, what I would tell myself when I was younger is it's happening.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. Your experience of it defines how it happens.
Mm.
You can't stop it from happening. So, there's nothing that I can do here or there or anywhere else to stop aging. But I do get to have a say in how I age.
Mm.
And I like that. I like that I get to choose. I always want to be standing in a place of choice. So, do I get bioidentical hormone replacement because
Mhm.
I've done my research and
Right.
I want to live a long time from a really healthy standpoint. I don't
Yeah.
want to do menopause. I don't have to do menopause if I don't want to.
Right.
We have science now. We have information now. We're living in the age of information where
Yeah.
we don't have to sit in a doctor's office and have them tell us, well, that's just getting older. I'm sorry. We actually can really affect energy production in the mitochondria by supplementing with nitrogen. Okay, we
Mm.
can actually optimize liver function by supplementing with milk thistle. There are cell receptors in the liver that respond only to the phytochemical silymarin. I
Mhm.
know that because I've been proactive and responsible, which is the final principle of thoughtful aging: be proactive and responsible. So I would say to myself then what I say to myself now: it
Mm.
is your choice. You
Mm.
get to choose. Bottom line.
Yeah. Beautiful. So, so good. Oh my gosh. Well, I have to tell you, I cannot wait because I will be ordering your book as soon as we end
Thank you.
this podcast today because I am just even more fascinated by so much of what you said. And I love that. I love reminding women, reminding the younger generation that we do all have a choice of how we age. And no matter what, it is going to happen. And I know that even, as I have begun the aging process, I get excited every time I have a new birthday, and I'm thrilled
Mm-hmm.
and so looking forward to being a grandma, being able to live with vitality, to be able to still have fun with my grandchildren and to, play with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the choices that I get to make now in order to make those things happen. I do have control over certain things in my life, and that is one of them. And, I love what you said about bioidentical hormones. I mean, you've done the research, it's educating ourselves. And, this is why I love podcasts, I love books, because these are the steps that we can start to take to learn about these things and to start to maybe shift our perspective. And my hope is that, listeners that are listening today are going to go, wow, those are some things I had not thought of. And I don't want to, if they are in a place that they're feeling stuck and not loving this aging process, to be able to go, what are some ways that I can change that? And, this sparked that conversation and that thought in their mind. So I would love to know, just as we're wrapping up, I know we could be on here all day long, but I want people to read your book too, and I want people to connect with you. So how can listeners connect with you and learn more about your work or get a copy of your book?
My book is available everywhere. My distributor is Istica Books. It's on Amazon, Kindle version, ebook, audiobook, and thoughtfulagingbook.com is where you can find out more about me. I do offer small private women's retreats at a location in Oregon, very
Wonderful.
private location. So I do that. I do speaking. And I absolutely love helping women see and rediscover their true beauty and the essence of who they are.
I
So,
love that. And we will have all of that information in the show notes as well. So that way you can be in touch with Alina. And thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. I really hope that, again, everyone is leaving this conversation feeling inspired to embrace the beauty and the wisdom that aging brings, because I really do believe with all of my heart that it does as well. And I want you to make sure that you're checking out Alina's book and go to the website. There's so much information there. So we want to make sure that you're there. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, leave a review. It all matters. And remember that you are already beautiful and your story is just the beginning. So until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and know the best is here waiting for you. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you,
And
Lynn.
thanks, Alina.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me here today. Your presence means the world to me. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review. And don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Head to the show notes and let's connect. Rise to Shine Co. is ready to support you in coaching, collaboration, life tips, or even a coffee chat. Until next time, keep shining, my friends.